The first time they called me a murderer, it was on the steps of the courthouse. Cameras flashed like summer lightning, microphones pushed into my face. Someone shouted my name. No, not my name. They shouted, "Monster." I remember thinking how strange it was that the sky over Briar Hollow was such a bright, forgiving blue. "Did you kill Daniel Mercer?" The question followed me into the building, into the courtroom, into my bones. I didn't answer then. I'll answer now. No. Briar Hollow, Tennessee is the kind of small American town where everyone knows what you ordered for lunch before you finish chewing. We have one main street, 2 churches, and a high school football field that matters more than City Hall. People smile at you in the grocery store. They wave from porches. They also decide who you are long before you know it yourself. I was a 4th grade teacher at Briar Hollow Elementary. I lived alone in a little white house near Cedar Creek. I graded spelling tests on Fridays and drank chamomile tea before bed. My life was soft around the edges, until Daniel Mercer was found dead. Daniel owned Mercer Hardware, the oldest store in town. He sponsored Little League teams and shook hands too hard. He had a wife, Elaine, and a reputation for generosity. He also had secrets. I didn't know that then. What I knew was that on the night he died, I had argued with him in public. That was enough. It started at the Fall Harvest Festival. Every October, Briar Hollow sets up booths along Main Street. Pumpkin carving, caramel apples, hay rides. It smells like cinnamon and damp leaves. I was volunteering at the dunk tank to raise money for new library books. Daniel stopped by just after sunset. "Emily," he said, leaning on the wooden rail, "still fighting for fairy tales?" I smiled politely. "Reading isn't fairy tales, Daniel." "It's expensive," he replied. "Town budget's tight." He'd been pushing to redirect school funds to infrastructure improvements, which mostly meant expanding his hardware warehouse with a town contract. We argued. Not screaming, not dramatic, but people noticed. "You don't get to decide what these kids deserve," I told him, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He laughed, that loud public laugh. "Careful, Emily, you're starting to sound ungrateful." I walked away. By midnight, Daniel Mercer was dead. They found him behind his store, near the loading dock, blunt force trauma to the head. No witnesses, but there was blood on my sweater. That's what the police said. Detective Paulson came to my door at 6:12 the next morning. I remember the digital clock glowing red in my bedroom, 6:12. "Ms. Carter," he said gently, hat in hand, "we need you to come down to the station." He showed me the sweater sealed in plastic. Dark stains along the sleeve. "That's not possible," I whispered. "It had been hanging in my closet. I hadn't worn it since the festival." "Your fingerprints were found on a metal pipe near the body," he added. I stared at him. Of course they were. I volunteered at the school's maintenance committee. I'd handled half the pipes in town during repairs. But context doesn't matter when grief wants a villain. Elaine Mercer collapsed on the courthouse steps that afternoon, sobbing into a handkerchief. Cameras caught me walking past her in handcuffs. By evening, my face was on every local news channel. Teacher accused of murdering prominent businessman. Parents pulled their children from my classroom before the week ended. I was released on bail 3 days later. Briar Hollow no longer waved at me. Here's the thing about being innocent. You start doubting yourself. I replayed that night over and over. The festival, the argument, walking home beneath the streetlights. I remembered passing Mrs. Donnelly's bakery and seeing her lights still on. I remembered waving at Deputy Carl Jenkins as he drove by. He'd smiled. Carl had grown up in Briar Hollow. Quiet, polite, the kind of man who never quite commanded attention. He worked the late shift most nights. He also was one of the first officers at the crime scene. I didn't think about that at first. I was too busy trying to survive. The trial date loomed like a storm cloud. The town prosecutor painted me as ambitious, resentful, a woman who couldn't handle rejection. He showed the jury pictures of the blood-stained sweater. My defense attorney, a tired man from Nashville, argued contamination, planted evidence. But who would plant it? Why? I had no enemies. Or so I thought. One night, unable to sleep, I walked down to Cedar Creek. The water moved black and silent under the moonlight. I needed air. I wasn't alone. Someone stood near the old wooden footbridge. Emily? I recognized the voice. Elaine Mercer. She looked smaller without the cameras. Grief had hollowed her cheeks. You think I killed him? I said quietly. She hesitated. I don't know what to think anymore. We stood there listening to the creek. He wasn't who people thought he was, she said finally. My heart skipped. What do you mean? She swallowed. Daniel was under investigation. Misuse of town funds. Someone filed an anonymous complaint. A chill crept through me. Who? I don't know. But I had a feeling. The next morning, I went to City Hall. I requested public records, budget allocations, infrastructure contracts. Daniel had been diverting money, small amounts at first, then larger ones, funds meant for schools, road repairs. The anonymous complaint had triggered a quiet internal review. Only a handful of officials knew. One of them was Deputy Carl Jenkins. Carl handled town audits alongside his patrol duties. Community liaison was part of his community liaison role. And Carl had a brother, Tom Jenkins. Tom had applied for the hardware warehouse expansion last year and lost to Daniel's preferred supplier. Suddenly, lines began to connect. But suspicion isn't proof. I needed more. 2 days before my trial resumed, I received a call from Mrs. Donnelly, the bakery owner. Emily, she whispered, I didn't want to get involved, but I saw something that night. My pulse thundered. I saw Carl's patrol car behind Mercer Hardware around 11:30, said she, long after the festival ended. That's not unusual, I replied automatically. He wasn't responding to a call, she said. He was arguing. I couldn't hear words, but Daniel looked afraid. Afraid. Why didn't you tell anyone? I asked. Because Carl's been like a son to this town, and you were already arrested. Of course, Briar Hollow protects its own, unless you're no longer considered one of its own. I took the information to my attorney. He filed a motion to reopen evidence and subpoena Carl's patrol logs. Carl claimed he'd handled the pipe during evidence collection, but protocol required gloves. And there was something else. The blood on my sweater. It matched Daniel's, but there were microscopic fibers embedded in the fabric. Fibers from the trunk lining of Carl's patrol car. My sweater had been in his vehicle, placed there. I pictured him smiling as he drove by me that night. I pictured him stopping at my house before dawn. He knew my spare key was hidden in the flower pot. Everyone did. Small towns have no real secrets. When confronted with the forensic findings, Carl maintained his innocence until Mrs. Donnelly agreed to testify. She described the argument, Daniel's raised hands, Carl's fury. And then Elaine did something none of us expected. She stood. I lied, she said, voice shaking. Daniel told me he was meeting Carl that night. He said he was going to report him. The courtroom fell silent. Report him for what? The judge asked. For siphoning money from seized asset funds, she whispered. Carl's face finally cracked. Just a flicker, but I saw it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I sat at the defense table, hands folded, trying not to tremble. When they returned, I couldn't breathe. On the charge of first-degree murder, the defendant, Emily Carter, we find not guilty. The words didn't feel real. Not guilty. A sound escaped my throat, half sob, half gasp. But the trial wasn't over.
The judge ordered Carl Jenkins into custody pending investigation. 2 weeks later, he was formally charged with Daniel Mercer's murder and multiple counts of embezzlement. He confessed after 3 days. Daniel had confronted him behind the store, threatened exposure. Carl snapped. One blow with the pipe, then panic, then a plan. He needed someone the town could believe capable of anger, someone who'd argued publicly, someone visible. Me. The day Carl was sentenced, Briar Hollow gathered again on those courthouse steps. No cameras this time, just townspeople. Some avoided my eyes. Some offered awkward apologies. Mrs. Donnelly hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Elaine approached last. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For needing someone else to blame before I could face the truth." I nodded.